She thought banning me from the wedding would break me, but the calm smile on my face was the warning she should have noticed. She didn't know every detail of that wedding was under my name, and with just one phone call, her perfect day collapsed in seconds. Before I start the story, I want to get to know you too. Write the flag colors of the country you're watching from, and I'll try to guess. Who knows? Maybe we're neighbors. I never thought the cruelest words of my life would come from the woman my son chose to marry. But there I was at 70 years old, listening on the phone as Jasmine, my only son Darius's fiancée, spoke to me with that fake sweet voice I knew all too well. Mrs. Williams, I'm sorry to inform you that you won't be able to attend the wedding. You're simply not invited. I was finishing up ironing my navy blue church suit at that moment, the one I'd bought with such care at Belk in South Park, spending nearly half my Social Security check because I wanted to look elegant on my son's most important day. My hands trembled as I held the phone, trying to process what I'd just heard. For the past 3 years, I'd been trying to win that girl's affection, always patient, always hopeful that someday she'd see me as a second mother. But Jasmine, honey, I said with a breaking voice, I'm Darius's mama. How can I not be at his wedding? Her response hit me like ice water. Mrs. Williams, you need to understand. The venue turned out smaller than we thought, and we had to make cuts. You simply don't fit into our plans. I couldn't stop the tears from falling. But honey, I've been saving for this day ever since Darius told me y'all were getting married. I've prepared everything with so much love. Oh, Mrs. Williams, don't be dramatic, she interrupted impatiently. Darius will visit you after the reception to tell you all about it. Maybe y'all can have Sunday dinner together next week. When I hung up that phone, I stood in the middle of my small living room, staring at that navy blue suit I'd chosen with such care. I remembered the hours I'd spent at the department stores, comparing prices, feeling the fabrics, imagining myself hugging my son at the altar. Now that suit looked so sad hanging there, like it knew it had no purpose anymore. I sat in my favorite armchair, the one my late husband Jerome had given me 20 years ago, and for the first time in a long while, I let myself cry, without holding back. But while I cried, something strange began growing in my chest. A coldness I'd never felt before, a calm that scared me, but also gave me new strength. I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made for Darius since I became a widow at 50. I remembered the sleepless nights working overtime at the textile plant to pay for his college. The weekends I stopped going out with my church sisters to stay with him when he was sick. All the times I went without buying something for myself so he wouldn't lack for anything. And there I was, at 70, being excluded from the most important day in the life of the man I'd sacrificed everything for. But then, I remembered something that filled me with a determination I didn't know I had. 6 months ago, when Darius had asked me to help financially with the wedding because things were getting tight, I agreed without thinking twice. I'd gone to the bank and withdrawn my life savings, $50,000 that I'd kept for my old age for any emergency I might have. It's for your happiness, I told him when I gave him the envelope with the money. Your daddy would have been so proud to see you getting married. Darius had cried with gratitude that day. He'd hugged me so tight and said, Mama, you're the most generous woman in the world. I don't know what I'd do without you. And now it turned out that same son didn't want me at his wedding because his fiancée had decided I was a burden. I got up from the chair with renewed energy and went straight to the drawer where I kept all my important papers. I pulled out the contract I'd signed with Crystal Oaks Event Planning, the company organizing the whole wedding. I read it carefully, remembering every detail of what we'd contracted. The flowers, $4,000. The gospel quartet, $2,000. Food for 150 guests, $12,000. The church decoration at New Hope Baptist, $3,000. The three-tier cake, $1,500. The photographer, $2,500. And all the small details that added up to another $10,000. Everything paid in advance with my savings money. Everything under my name because Darius had insisted it would be easier for the paperwork. I picked up the phone and dialed the number for Monique Harris, owner of Crystal Oaks Event Planning. When she answered with her usual cheerful voice, I said, "Monique, this is Loretta Williams, Darius's mother. I need to speak with you urgently about today's wedding." "Oh, Mrs. Williams, how are you? Everything's going perfectly for this afternoon. My team is already setting up the decorations at the church and—" "Monique," I interrupted with a calm that surprised even me, "I need you to cancel everything. There won't be a wedding." There was silence on the other end of the line. "What did you say, Mrs. Williams? I don't understand what you're telling me." "Monique, I need you to cancel the flowers, the quartet, the food, everything right now." "But, Mrs. Williams, the wedding is in 4 hours. I already have all my people working. The food is almost ready." "Monique, you and I have known each other for 15 years. You know I've always kept my word with you. Everything I contracted is paid in advance, so you won't have any losses. I just need you to cancel everything and not give explanations to anyone but me." There was another moment of silence before Monique asked softly, "Are you all right, Mrs. Williams? Did something happen?" "I'm perfectly fine, Monique. Better than I've been in a long time. Just do what I'm asking, please." "All right, Mrs. Williams. If that's your decision, I respect it. Do you want me to refund the money?" "No, Monique. Consider it your full payment for all the trouble this might cause you. You're not to blame for anything." After hanging up with Monique, I dialed the second number on my list, Pastor Clarence Brown, from New Hope Baptist Church, where the ceremony was supposed to take place. "Pastor Brown, this is Loretta Williams. I'm sorry to inform you that my son Darius's wedding, scheduled for this afternoon, is canceled." The pastor was speechless for a moment. "Loretta, what happened? Is everything all right?" "Pastor, you've seen me every Sunday for 3 years in your church. You know me, you know I'm not a capricious woman. The wedding is canceled. Period. Please inform any guests who arrive that the ceremony will not take place." "But, Loretta, your son called yesterday to confirm everything. What do I tell people who come?" "Tell them that sometimes people discover they're not as important as they thought they were. That sometimes the truth hurts, but it also sets you free." After hanging up with Pastor Brown, I sat at my dining table looking at the contact list I'd made for the wedding. Then my phone rang. It was Darius. "Mama, I just talked to Jasmine and she told me y'all discuss the wedding. I wanted to explain." "You don't need to explain anything to me, son," I said with a tranquility that surprised me. "Your fiancé was very clear. I'm not invited to your wedding."
Mama, it's not like that. It's just, well, you know how Jasmine is. Sometimes she says things in a kind of direct way, but it's not that we don't want you there. It's just that... It's just what, Darius? Darius was quiet for a moment before sighing. It's that Jasmine thinks maybe it would be better if it was something more intimate. Just us two and her parents. You know, something small and elegant. Every word he said was like a stab to my heart, but I maintained that strange calm that had appeared out of nowhere. "I understand perfectly, son, and let me tell you that I completely respect your decision." "Really, Mama? That's good that you understand. I knew you were the best mama in the world. I promise that after the honeymoon, we'll organize a family dinner to celebrate." Yes, don't worry about that, Darius. That won't be necessary. I love you so much, Mama. You're the best. When he hung up, I stared at the phone for a long time. My own son. The baby I carried in my arms when he was sick. The child I'd sung lullabies to until he was 10 because he had nightmares. Who had told me, Mama, you're my hero when he graduated college. Had just confirmed that his new family had no place for me. But what they didn't know was that I had one last card up my sleeve. I went to my bedroom and pulled out from under my bed a small suitcase that had belonged to my husband. I filled it with the essentials, a couple of dresses, underwear, my medicines, and the photo from my wedding with Jerome. I also packed the envelope where I kept all the legal documents for the wedding, contracts, receipts, authorizations. Then I took a sheet of paper from my desk and began writing a letter. Not a long letter full of reproaches, but something simple and direct. Darius, for 30 years I gave you everything I had and everything I was. Today I discovered that for you and your new family, I'm just a burden. I accept your decision, but I'm also making mine. Don't look for your mama anymore. Find your own path without the old woman who bothers you so much. With love, but from a distance, Loretta. I put the letter in an envelope and left it on the dining table along with my house keys because I had made a decision that would change everything forever. It was noon. The wedding was scheduled for 5 in the afternoon. I took my suitcase, my purse, and walked toward the door. But before leaving, I stopped in front of the hallway mirror and looked at myself one last time in that house that had been my home for 30 years. I saw a 70-year-old woman with gray hair, but with eyes shining in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. I saw a woman who for decades had put everyone before herself, who had sacrificed her dreams, her money, her time, her happiness for love of a son who now considered her a burden. But what they didn't know was that I had one last card up my sleeve. I left the house without looking back and walked the 3 blocks to my friend Mallory Robinson's house, the only person in the world who knew what was about to happen. When she opened the door and saw me with my suitcase, she hugged me without asking questions. "Is it done, sister?" she asked softly. "It's done, Mallory. I canceled everything." We sat in her small living room, and she served me chamomile tea. "Do you think you did the right thing?" I looked out her window toward the street where I'd grown up, where I'd raised Darius, where I'd built my whole life. Mallory, for the first time in 30 years, I did something just for me. For the first time, I stood up for myself. And what are you going to do now? Now I'm going to wait for them to discover what it feels like to lose someone who loved them unconditionally. At 3 in the afternoon, my phone started ringing desperately. First Darius, then Jasmine, then her parents who couldn't understand why there were no flowers at the church, why the gospel quartet wasn't arriving, why Crystal Oak's event hall was empty. But I didn't answer any calls. Instead, I stayed seated in Mallory's house, drinking tea, and feeling for the first time in decades a deep and true peace, because I had finally understood something that had taken me 70 years to learn. Nobody can trample your dignity unless you let them, and I had decided never to allow it again. At 5 in the afternoon, when the ceremony was supposed to begin, Mallory's phone rang. It was Monique from Crystal Oaks. "Sister, people are calling me asking what happened. What should I tell them?" Mallory looked at me, and I took the phone. "Monique, tell them that sometimes people discover that love can't be begged for, that respect can't be pleaded for, and that a mother isn't an object you can use when convenient and throw away when she's in the way." That night, when they finally came looking for me at May's house, they found something they didn't expect. A woman who had decided that her story wouldn't end with her being the victim,
but with her being the hero of her own life. And what they still didn't know was that this was just the beginning. That night, I couldn't sleep a single minute. I stayed seated on May's small sofa, looking out the window toward the street where I could see the lights of my old neighborhood. Every time I closed my eyes, images from the last 3 years appeared in my mind like a movie I couldn't stop. I remembered every moment, every word, every gesture that should have warned me this would happen. The first time Darius introduced me to Jasmine was in my own house on a Sunday after church service. He arrived nervous, smiling in that way he had when he was very excited about something. "Mama, I want you to meet someone very special," he had told me. And I felt my heart fill with joy because after so many years of just the two of us, he had finally found love. Jasmine entered my house wearing high heels that echoed on my hardwood floors, dressed in a beige business suit that looked more expensive than all my dresses combined. She was a beautiful woman, I couldn't deny that, with perfectly styled hair and nails painted a pale pink that matched her leather purse. But what I remember most about that first encounter was the way her eyes scanned my living room, my dining room, my kitchen, as if she were evaluating everything she saw. "What a quaint house," she had said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You can tell you've lived here many years, Mrs. Williams." I had prepared my famous smothered chicken, Darius's favorite dish since he was a child, and I'd put out my best tablecloth, the one my mother had embroidered before she died. Jasmine sat delicately in the chair as if she was afraid of getting dirty, and when I served her the chicken, she smiled politely but barely ate 2 bites. "It's very flavorful, Mrs. Williams, but I have a very strict diet. My nutritionist has forbidden me from eating heavily seasoned foods," she had said, leaving her plate practically full. I remember Darius rushing to explain. "Jasmine is a lawyer, Mama. She works at a very important firm in uptown Charlotte. Her parents have an estate in the mountains." During that first meal, Jasmine talked a lot about her family, about the refined values they had instilled in her, about how important it was to maintain certain standards in life. I listened silently, trying to understand why each of her words made me feel so small in my own house. "My daddy always says that education and class show in everything you do. For example, in my house, we never eat on plates that aren't fine china. It's a family tradition." That night, after they left, I stayed washing dishes and thinking about those words. I looked at my everyday plates that had served thousands of meals made with love for 30 years, and for the first time in my life, I felt ashamed of them. During the following months, Jasmine's visits to my house became less and less frequent. At first, she came with Darius on Sundays, but little by little, she started having family commitments or work dinners that coincided exactly with our family days. Darius always had an excuse for her. "She's very busy with an important case. Her family is very close and they need her. She's organizing a charity dinner for her sorority." I tried to understand, to be patient. After all, I thought, it was natural that a young, successful woman would have many responsibilities. But what hurt me was the way Darius began to change when he was with her. One afternoon, Jasmine came to the house, accompanied by her mother, Evelyn Cole, an elegant lady who always dressed in light colors and wore jewelry that sparkled when she moved. I had prepared sweet tea and some cornbread with honey butter that I'd learned to make from my grandmother. The two women sat in my living room, and while I served the food, I heard Mrs. Cole comment in a low voice, "Oh, honey, I hope when y'all get married, you don't have to come to this neighborhood very often. It's so far from the nice part of town." Jasmine had responded in the same low tone. "Don't worry, Mama. I already talked to Darius about that. We're looking at the possibility of Loretta moving somewhere closer to downtown, something smaller and more suitable for someone her age." I was standing in the kitchen doorway with the cornbread in my hands, and I felt like the floor was moving beneath my feet. Moving? Leaving the house where I'd raised Darius, where I'd lived with Jerome, where all my memories were? That night, I asked Darius about that conversation. "Son, is it true that Jasmine wants me to move from here?" He avoided my gaze and got nervous. "Not exactly, Mama. It's just that this house is very big for you alone, and it's kind of far out. Jasmine just thinks maybe you'd be more comfortable in a smaller place, closer to medical centers and stores."
But this is my house, Darius. My whole life is here. I know, Mama, and nobody's pressuring you. Just think about it. When Jasmine and I get married, maybe it would be good for you to have a change. That was the first time I understood that my needs had become secondary. Jasmine wanted to redesign Darius's life, and I was a piece that didn't fit in her puzzle. If you're still here, leave a meaningful quote below. Let's see how many hearts felt this story. The following months were a series of small humiliations disguised as kindness. Jasmine arrived at my house with gifts: face creams that helped with wrinkles, vitamin pills for senior women, books about staying active after 70. Each gift came accompanied by a sweet smile and an apparently innocent comment. "Mrs. Williams, I saw this cream at the pharmacy and thought of you. It says it really helps with age spots," she had told me one day, handing me an expensive little box while looking at my face as if it were a project that needed renovation. Another day, she brought some pills. "My doctor recommended these vitamins for my mama. They're special for older women who need a little energy boost." The way she said "older women" made me feel like I already had one foot in the grave. But what hurt me most was seeing how Darius was pulling away from me little by little. Before meeting Jasmine, he came to visit me 3 or 4 times a week. He'd arrive after work, we'd have dinner together, he'd tell me about his construction projects, we'd plan weekends. After Jasmine, the visits reduced to once a week, then every 2 weeks, until he almost only came when he needed something. The first big fight we had was about my 68th birthday. I had planned a small family meal, just Darius, Jasmine, and me. I had cooked all morning: fried chicken, mac and cheese, sweet potato pie. I put out my best tablecloth, brought out the china I saved for special occasions, and even bought flowers for the centerpiece. Darius arrived with Jasmine, but you could tell she didn't want to be there. She sat on the edge of the chair, constantly checking her phone, and when I asked her about work, she answered with single words. After half an hour, she got up and told Darius, "Honey, don't you remember we have dinner with my parents at 8? You promised we'd arrive early." Darius went pale. "Oh yes, I had forgotten. Mama, I'm sorry, but we have to go. You know how Mr. Cole is. He doesn't like us to be late. We'll take a piece of cake to eat later." They left, abandoning me alone with all the food, with the table set for 3 people, and with the birthday cake uncut. That night, I cried like I hadn't cried since Jerome died. Things got worse when Jasmine and Darius were officially engaged. The proposal was at her parents' house, an elegant ceremony to which I was invited, but where I felt completely out of place. The Cole family house was a mansion in the exclusive Ballantine neighborhood, with perfectly manicured gardens and domestic staff serving hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. I arrived in my best dress, but seeing the other ladies dressed in designer clothes and sparkling jewelry, I felt like an intruder. Jasmine introduced me as Darius's mother, while she introduced her own mother as my beloved mama, Evelyn Cole, who comes from a family of established Charlotte business owners. Throughout the party, Jasmine and her mother planned the wedding out loud, talking about imported flowers, European designer dresses, honeymoons in Europe. I listened in silence, wondering what my role would be in all of this. Of course, we'll have to limit the guest list, Mrs. Cole had said. An elegant wedding requires selectivity. We can't invite just anyone. Jasmine had nodded. You're right, Mama. Darius and I want something intimate and sophisticated, only the people who really matter. That night, when we were alone, I asked Darius about the wedding plans. Son, can I help with anything? I have some savings put away in case y'all need it. His eyes lit up. Really, Mama? Because the truth is, it's getting more expensive than we thought. Jasmine wants everything to be perfect. That's how I ended up paying for most of a wedding where I apparently wasn't welcome. $50,000 from my life savings, the money I had saved for my old age, for any medical emergency I might have. Everything went to flowers, food, music, and decorations for the wedding of a woman who saw me as a burden. During the preparations, Jasmine assigned me minor tasks. Mrs. Williams, could you handle getting the favor bags? Nothing too expensive, just something simple. Oh, you could help us with transporting the chairs. Darius told me you know people in that business. I was always the last to know about important decisions. I found out about the menu when it was already confirmed, about the decorations when they were already bought, about the music when it was already hired. It was like I was an employee, not the mother of the groom. The final straw was when I went to Jasmine's dress fitting. She had invited me to see how beautiful your daughter-in-law looks. But when I arrived at the elegant boutique in South Park, I realized I was the only older person there. All the others were young friends of Jasmine's, women from her same social class who talked about things I didn't understand. When Jasmine came out of the fitting room in her dress wedding, everyone applauded and squealed with excitement. She was beautiful. I couldn't deny it. The dress was white silk with imported lace and a long train that shimmered under the boutique lights. She looked like a princess. What do you think, Mrs. Williams? She asked me, and all eyes turned toward me. You're gorgeous, honey, I told her honestly. Darius is going to cry with emotion when he sees you. But then one of her friends commented, Oh, Jasmine, I hope your mother-in-law doesn't wear something too flashy on your wedding day. You know how ladies of that generation are. They always want to be the center of attention. Jasmine laughed. Don't worry, Sophia. I already talked to her about that. Didn't I, Mrs. Williams? You're going to wear something discreet and elegant, nothing too bright or colorful. All the girls laughed, and I felt my face burn with shame. That's when I completely understood what my place was in Darius's new life. I was a tolerated guest, not beloved family. Now, sitting in May's house, remembering all this, I finally understood that the signs had been there for 3 years. I simply hadn't wanted to see them because I was afraid of losing my son. What are you thinking about, sister? May asked, approaching with a cup of chamomile tea. I'm thinking that I was very foolish for a long time, May, very blind. You weren't foolish, Loretta. You were a mama who loved her son. That's not being foolish. But I should have set boundaries from the beginning. I should have spoken up clearly. May sat beside me. And what would you have gained? Lost Darius faster. Sometimes things have to reach rock bottom so you can touch ground and push yourself back up. Outside, it began to rain, and the sound of drops on the tin roof reminded me of all the nights I'd spent alone in my house, waiting for Darius to call, waiting for Jasmine to accept me, waiting to be important to someone again. May, do you think I did the right thing, canceling everything? My friend looked at me with those wise eyes of hers, full of wrinkles, but also full of life. Loretta, how old of you? 70. And how many more years are you going to wait to start living for yourself? I didn't know how to answer, but something inside my chest relaxed for the first time in a long while. May's phone rang at 11 that night. It was Pastor Brown. May, is Loretta there? Her son Darius came to the church with his fiancée and her parents. They're very upset, wanting to know what happened. The young man is crying. May looked at me, asking if I wanted to talk. I shook my head. Pastor, tell them that Loretta is fine, but she's not going to talk to anyone tonight. Tomorrow, when they calm down, they can have a conversation. After hanging up, we sat in silence listening to the rain. I knew that somewhere out there in the city, Darius and Jasmine were trying to understand what had happened to their perfect wedding. I knew they were probably angry, confused, maybe even hating me. But for the first time in 3 years, I didn't care what they thought of me. For the first time in 70 years of life, I had done something completely for myself, and it felt like the first day of a new life. I woke up before dawn on May's sofa with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in years. Outside, it was still raining softly, and the sound of the drops calmed me in a strange way. For the first time in a long while, I didn't wake up thinking about what Darius might need or how I could win Jasmine's approval. I woke up thinking about myself. May was already awake, making coffee in her small kitchen. The aroma of cinnamon filled the house and reminded me of Sundays from my childhood, when my grandmother would make us breakfast after church. "Good morning, sister," she said without turning around. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months," I answered honestly. "May, I need to ask you a very big favor." She turned toward me with curiosity. "Tell me what you need." "I want to stay here a few days while I decide what I'm going to do with my life. I'll pay you rent, of course." "Loretta Williams, don't you dare talk about money. This is your home for as long as you need it. But tell me something. Do you already have a plan?" I sat at her wooden table, the same one where we'd had tea so many afternoons talking about our children when they were small. "Yes, May, I have a plan, but I need you to help me execute it without asking questions." Her eyes shone with a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Is it legal?" I laughed for the first time in weeks. "Completely legal, just definitive." At 8 in the morning, while May went to the grocery store to give the impression it was a normal day, I stayed at her house waiting for the calls I knew would come. I wasn't wrong. The phone started ringing at 8:30 sharp. First it was Darius. I let it ring. Then Jasmine. I also let it ring. Then Mrs. Cole called, probably furious because her daughter's perfect wedding had been ruined by the problematic mother-in-law. I didn't answer any calls. At 10 in the morning, when I calculated they'd be completely desperate, I dialed the first number on my list. It was Marcus Hill, the lawyer who had handled my husband Jerome's papers when he died, and who since then had taken care of all my legal matters. "Mr. Hill, this is Loretta Williams. I need to see you urgently to make some changes to my documents." "Mrs. Williams, how are you? Is everything all right? Yesterday, your son Darius called asking about your papers, but I couldn't give him any information without your authorization." "Darius called him? What did he want to know?" "He was asking about your will, about the house deeds, about your bank accounts. He sounded very worried. Did something happen?" "Mr. Hill, can you come see me today? It's urgent." "Of course, Mrs. Williams. Where shall we meet?" I gave him May's address, and we agreed to meet at 2 in the afternoon. Then I dialed the second number, the bank where I had my savings account. "Good morning. This is Loretta Williams. I need to make an appointment with the manager to make some important movements in my account." "Of course, Mrs. Williams. Would 4 this afternoon work for you?" "Perfect." My third call was to Johnson Realty, the same company that had helped me buy my house 30 years ago. "Good morning. This is Loretta Williams. I want to put my house up for sale." There was a pause on the other end. "Mrs. Williams, this is Trevor Jackson, Robert Johnson's son. Are you sure you want to sell? That house has so many memories for you. Precisely because of that, I want to sell it, Trevor. It's time to make new memories in another place." "I understand. When can we come do the evaluation?" "Tomorrow morning, if possible." After making these calls, I felt strangely liberated. It was like every decision I made took a weight off my shoulders. For so many years, I had lived thinking about Darius's future, about preserving the house so he could inherit it, about saving money to leave him when I died. But now I wondered why I was living as if I were already dead. At noon, May returned from the grocery store with a worried expression. "Sister, I ran into Mrs. Johnson at the butcher shop. She told me the whole neighborhood is talking about what happened yesterday, that Darius and Jasmine were all over the area looking for you last night." "And what else are people saying?" "Well, you know how people are. Some say you did wrong, that a child is a child and you have to endure everything. But others say it was about time you set boundaries. Mrs. Washington told me that girl never liked Loretta. You could see it from a mile away." I laughed bitterly. If even Mrs. Washington could tell, it means it was very obvious. "Loretta, are you going to tell me what your plan is? You've got me worried." I looked into the eyes of this woman who had been my confidant for more than 20 years. "May, I'm going to start a new life. I'm going to sell the house. I'm going to change my will, and I'm going to go live somewhere else where nobody knows me as Darius's mama or Jasmine's difficult mother-in-law." Her eyes filled with tears. "Are you leaving Charlotte?" "I don't know yet. Maybe. Or maybe I'll just move downtown to one of those nice apartments for seniors that are close to everything. What I do know is that I'm not going to keep living for other people who don't value me." At 2 o'clock sharp, Marcus Hill arrived. He was an older man of about 60 who had always treated me with great respect. When he saw my serious face and determination, he understood this wasn't time for social chat. "Mrs. Williams, tell me how I can help you." "Mr. Hill, I want to change my will completely. I want my house and all my assets to go to the Charlotte Children's Home Foundation. Nothing for Darius." He was quiet for a moment, studying my face. "Mrs. Williams, are you sure about this? It's a very big decision." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "May I ask what happened? Yesterday, your son seemed very worried when he called." I told him the whole story. The canceled wedding, the 3 years of humiliation, Jasmine's call telling me I wasn't invited. The lawyer listened in silence, nodding occasionally. "I understand completely, Mrs. Williams. I've seen many cases like this. Do you want to leave Darius anything, even if it's symbolic?" "I want to leave him a letter explaining why I made this decision. And I want to leave him my sewing machine so he remembers that his mama worked her whole life to give him the best." "Very well. I'll prepare the documents for tomorrow. Anything else?" "Yes, I want to make an immediate donation of $15,000 to the Charlotte Children's Home from my savings account." After the lawyer left, I headed to the bank. The manager, a young man named David Thompson, received me in his office with curiosity. He was a professional who had always been very attentive to me. "Mrs. Williams, how can I help you?" "I want to close my savings account and open a new one at a different bank. I also want to withdraw cash." "May I ask why? You've been a client of this bank for more than 20 years. "Precisely because of that. It's time for changes." We proceeded with the paperwork. I withdrew $30,000 in cash and transferred the rest to a new account at a different bank where nobody knew my history. When I left the bank with the money in my purse, I felt like a new woman. That afternoon, while May prepared dinner, I sat down to write a list of everything I wanted to do with my new life. It wasn't a long list, but each point represented something I had never dared to dream about. Learn to drive. I had never had a license. Take painting classes. Travel to New Orleans to see the art workshops. Live in a place where nobody knew my story. Get a modern haircut. Buy clothes that I liked, not what was appropriate for my age. While I wrote, May's phone rang constantly. Darius, Jasmine, Mrs. Cole, even some curious neighbors. May told them all the same thing. Loretta is fine, but she doesn't want to talk to anyone right now. At 8 at night, when it had gotten completely dark, we heard voices outside the house. May looked out the window and came back with a worried face. "Sister, Darius and Jasmine are there. They brought flowers and they look very upset." "Tell them I'm not here." "Loretta, the boy is crying. He looks very sorry." "May, if you open that door, I'm walking to my cousin Rose's house and you'll never see me again." May understood I was serious. She went to the door without opening it completely and spoke to Darius through the screen door. "Darius, your mama doesn't want to see you now. She's very hurt." "Mrs. Robinson, please, it was all a misunderstanding. Jasmine was just nervous about the wedding. We didn't mean to hurt my mama." From where I sat, I could hear Jasmine's voice. "Mrs. Robinson, we need to talk to her. We lost a lot of money yesterday. My family is furious and we need to resolve this." Those words were like a slap. Even now, after everything that had happened, Jasmine was incapable of offering sincere apologies. She only worried about the lost money and her family's opinion. I got up and went to the door. May looked at me with pleading eyes, but I had already made my decision. "Darius," I said through the screen without opening the door. "Mama, thank God. Mama, forgive me, please. I didn't know Jasmine had said those things to you. When I found out, I got furious with her." "You got furious? After 3 years, you hadn't noticed how she treated me?" There was an uncomfortable silence. Jasmine tried to interrupt. "Mrs. Williams, I never meant to." "Jasmine," I interrupted, with a calm that surprised me. "You don't have to pretend anymore. Yesterday, you did me the biggest favor of my life by being honest with me." "Mama, please open the door. We can fix all this." "There's nothing to fix, Darius. Yesterday, I learned something very important, that I'd rather be alone than be where I'm not wanted." "But Mama, you know I love you." "Darius, if you loved me, in 3 years you would have noticed how I felt. If you loved me, you wouldn't have allowed your fiancée to talk to me the way she did yesterday." "Mama, please don't do this out of spite." "It's not spite, Darius. It's dignity. It's something I should have done a long time ago." Jasmine finally lost her patience. "Mrs. Williams, we need you to return the wedding money. My daddy is furious and says he's going to sue you if you don't resolve this." May and I looked at each other. There was the truth. They hadn't come out of love or repentance. They had come for the money. "Jasmine," I said very calmly, "the money I put toward the wedding was mine. It was a gift I gave Darius because I believed he loved and respected me. Yesterday, I discovered I was wrong." "So what are we going to do?" Jasmine shouted. "We lost everything because of your tantrum." "You're going to do the same thing I've done for 70 years. You're going to solve your problems on your own." Darius began to cry. "Mama, you can't do this. I'm your son." "Precisely because you're my son, you should have taken care of me and protected me. Instead, you allowed your fiancé to humiliate me for 3 years." "Mama, I swear we're going to change. Jasmine is going to apologize to you, right, Jasmine?" Jasmine didn't respond immediately, and that silence said everything. "Go away," I said finally. "There's nothing more to talk about."
Mama, please. Darius, tomorrow they're going to change the locks on my house. You no longer have keys to my life. I heard them walk away in silence, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel guilty for putting my needs before my son's. May came back inside with teary eyes. Are you sure about all this, sister? I've never been more sure of anything, May. For the first time in 70 years, I feel free. That night, I slept deeply, dreaming of a new life where nobody would know me as the suffering mama or the problematic mother-in-law. Tomorrow, I would start building Loretta Williams, the woman who had been hidden for decades behind the role of sacrificing mother, and it felt like the first day of the rest of my life. A week after the canceled wedding, I had already signed all the papers for the sale of my house. Trevor Jackson had found buyers in just 3 days, a young couple with 2 small children who got excited seeing the large backyard and spacious kitchen where I had prepared thousands of meals for Darius. When I signed the deeds at the notary's office, I felt like I was closing a very long and heavy book of my life. Mrs. Williams, Trevor told me as we put away the documents, I hope you don't regret this decision. That house was worth much more than memories. Precisely because of that, I sold it, Trevor, because it was worth much more than bitter memories. With the money from the sale, plus my remaining savings, I had enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life, without depending on anyone. It was a strange feeling, but liberating. For the first time in 70 years, my future depended only on my own decisions. Mallory had helped me find a small but beautiful apartment in a senior living community in uptown Charlotte. It had 1 bedroom, a small living room, an integrated kitchen, and most importantly, a balcony where I could put plants and watch the sunrise every day. It wasn't big, but it was mine. Completely mine. During that week, Darius had called every day to Mallory's phone. She asked me each time if I wanted to talk to him, and each time I told her no. Not out of resentment, but because I needed time to get used to the new Loretta who was being born inside me. Saturday morning, while I was packing my few belongings at Mallory's house, an unexpected visit arrived. It was Mrs. Johnson, my neighbor for 30 years, accompanied by Mrs. Washington and Mrs. Davis. The 3 came with serious faces, like they were coming to a funeral. Loretta, said Mrs. Johnson after Mallory served her coffee, we come to talk to you as lifelong friends. Say what you have to say. Look, we understand that you're upset with Darius and that girl, but you can't throw your life away over anger. Throw my life away?
Oh, Loretta, interrupted Mrs. Davis. You sold your house, changed your will, you're going to live alone. What are you going to do when you get sick, when you need help? I looked at the 3 of them with a smile that puzzled them. Friends, for 30 years you watched me sacrifice myself for Darius. You saw me cry when he didn't visit. You saw me suffer when that girl despised me. And now that I finally do something for myself, you come to tell me I'm wrong? It's that a son is a son, Loretta, insisted Mrs. Johnson. Children make mistakes, but they're still our children. You're right, Johnson. Darius is still my son, but I'm also still a woman, a person who deserves respect and love, and if he can't give me that, then I'm going to give it to myself. The 3 were quiet. Finally, Mrs. Washington sighed and said, Well, Loretta, we hope you know what you're doing. For the first time in my life, I do know what I'm doing. After they left, Mallory sat with me on the back patio of her house. Aren't you scared, sister, starting over at 70? I'm terrified, Mallory, but you know what scared me more? Dying without
ever having lived for myself. Monday morning, I moved into my new apartment. Mallory accompanied me, and between the two of us, we arranged my few things: my clothes, some books, the photo of my wedding with Jerome, my sewing machine, and the plants I had saved for my previous house. The apartment looked almost empty, but to me it seemed full of possibilities. "What are you going to do now?" Mallory asked, while we drank coffee in my new kitchen. I took out the list I had written days earlier. "I'm going to fulfill all these dreams I never allowed myself to have." That same afternoon, I went to Quick Start driving school, where a young instructor named Lisa received me with a huge smile. "I'm so glad you decided to do this, Mrs. Williams. It's never too late to learn." "I'm 70 years old," I told her. "Don't you think it's ridiculous?" "Do you think it's ridiculous to live your life the way you want? Because to me, it seems brave." Driving lessons became my favorite activity. Lisa was patient and fun and made me feel like being 70 was an advantage, not a disadvantage. "You drive more carefully than young people," she told me. "They're in a hurry, but you know how to enjoy the journey." After 2 weeks of lessons, on a Wednesday afternoon, I was practicing parallel parking when I saw a familiar car parked in front of the school. It was Darius waiting for me. When I got out of the practice car, he approached with a surprised expression. "Mama, what are you doing here?" "Learning to drive." "How did you find me?" "I've been asking about you all over Charlotte. Mrs. Robinson told me you had moved, but she wouldn't give me your address." I looked at him with curiosity. He looked tired, thinner, and there was something different in his eyes. "What do you want, Darius?" "I want to talk to you. I have many things to tell you." "Talk." He stood there, on the sidewalk, while people passed around us. "Mama, Jasmine and I broke up." I felt neither surprise nor satisfaction, just a kind of sadness for all the wasted time. "Why?"
Because after what happened on the wedding day, I started seeing things I hadn't wanted to see before, like the way she treated you, how she gradually pulled me away from you, how she made me feel ashamed of my own family. And what happened exactly? Darius sighed deeply. Last week, we went to dinner with her parents. Her mother, Mrs. Cole, started talking about you in front of everyone. She said you were a problematic woman and that it was better that you were no longer part of our lives, that now Darius could move up socially without the burden of a lower-class mother-in-law. I felt a stab in my chest, but no longer of pain, but of confirmation. Everything I had intuited for 3 years was true. And Jasmine, what did she say? Nothing. She stayed quiet, and that hurt me more than if she had agreed with her mother. I realized she had never defended me and had never defended you. And that's why you broke up? We broke up because that night I went home and started thinking about everything I had lost to please her. Mama, in 3 years, I stopped visiting you like before. I stopped calling you every day. I stopped bringing you flowers on your birthday because Jasmine said I was too attached to my mother. The words reached me, but they no longer hurt like before. It was like hearing the story of other people. Darius, I appreciate you telling me this, but it's too late. Too late for what? For things to go back to how they were before. I'm no longer the same woman I was 2 weeks ago. He looked at me confused. Mama, I know you're angry, but we can fix this. I can buy another house, we can live together again like before. Darius, I interrupted him gently. I'm not angry. I'm grateful. Grateful? Grateful because Jasmine forced me to see something I didn't want to see, that I had stopped living my own life, that I had become so small that I fit in whatever spaces others gave me. Mama, I never wanted you to feel that way. I know, son, but without meaning to, that's what happened. And now I'm building a new life where I'm the protagonist, not the mother who lives waiting for crumbs of attention. Darius began to cry. Mama, are you going to forgive me? I already forgave you, Darius. But forgiving doesn't mean going back. It means moving forward without resentment. So I'm no longer your son? I looked at him tenderly. This 41-year-old man who had grown so much physically, but was still the scared child who needed my approval for everything. You'll always be my son, but you're no longer going to be my entire life. What does that mean? It means I'll always love you, but I'm no longer going to wait for you to fill all my empty spaces. I'm going to build my own happiness. He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he asked, Can I visit you sometimes? Whenever you want, Darius, but on my terms, without apologies for being who I am, without shame about my background, without allowing anyone else to disrespect me. And if I meet someone else, if I get married again, I hope you meet someone who loves you completely, including your family. And I hope this time you know how to choose a woman who adds to your life, not one who subtracts from it. That day, after talking with Darius, I walked home to my apartment. It was a 15-minute walk that gave me time to reflect. I didn't feel resentment, but I also didn't feel the desperate urgency from before to recover his love. I had found something much more valuable, my own love. During the following weeks, Darius began visiting me regularly. At first, he came full of guilt, trying to compensate for the lost years with excessive gifts and attention. But little by little, as he realized I was no longer the needy woman from before, our visits became more natural. One Sunday afternoon, I was watering the plants on my balcony when he arrived unannounced. He brought a bag of pastries and 2 coffees. Mama, can I keep you company? Of course, son. We sat in the 2 chairs I had put on the balcony, watching the sunset over the city. Mama, are you happy? The question surprised me with its simplicity. Yes, Darius. For the first time in many years, I'm happy. Don't you feel lonely? Being alone and feeling lonely are very different things. Before, I lived accompanied, but felt lonely. Now I live alone, but I accompany myself. I don't understand. Before, all my identity depended on you. If you were well, I was well. If you needed me, I had purpose. Now my well-being depends on myself. Darius began thoughtful. What are you going to do with your life? I told him about my driving lessons, about the painting classes I was thinking of enrolling in, about the trip to New Orleans I was planning. I'm going to do everything I always wanted to do, but never dared to. And if you need something, if you get sick. Darius, I'm 70, not 90. I have money, I have health, I have time, and I have something I didn't have before. Desire to live. That afternoon, when Darius left, I stayed on the balcony until it got completely dark. I thought about the woman I had been until a month ago, fearful, dependent, always living in function of others. And I thought about the woman I was becoming, independent, brave, owner of her own story. The next day, I had an appointment to cut my hair. I had decided to get a modern cut, shorter, that would make me look like the new woman I was inside. When the stylist finished and showed me the mirror, I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me from the reflection. It was Loretta Williams, 70 years old, recently divorced from a life that didn't belong to her, and she looked beautiful. That night, I called May to tell her about my new haircut, about my plans for the trip to New Orleans, about the strange but wonderful feeling of waking up every day without having to consult with anyone about what to do with my time. You know what's the best thing about all this, sister? I told her before hanging up. What? That I'm not afraid of dying without having lived, because for the first time in 70 years, I'm truly alive. And when I turned off the lights in my small apartment with my new plants on the balcony and my new plans in my head, I fell asleep with the peaceful smile of someone who had finally learned that the most important love isn't the one we ask for, but the one we give ourselves. Loretta Williams's story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. 6 months after the wedding that never was, I woke up like every day at 6 in the morning in my small apartment. But this time was different. It was my 71st birthday, and for the first time in decades, I didn't wake up thinking about who would call me or who would come visit me. I woke up thinking about what gift I would give myself. I prepared my cinnamon coffee, like my grandmother had taught me, and sat on the balcony to watch the sunrise over Charlotte. My plants had grown beautiful. The red geraniums I had planted in clay pots, the herbs I used for cooking, and the small bougainvillea I had rescued from my previous house, and that now bloomed stronger than ever. While I drank my coffee, I mentally reviewed everything I had accomplished in these months. I had learned to drive and already had my license. Last week, I had bought a used car in good condition, a red sedan that made me feel independent. I had finished my watercolor painting course and already had 3 paintings hanging on the walls of my living room. One of Charlotte's downtown, another of a sunset at Lake Norman, and my favorite, a portrait of my grandmother that I had painted from memory. Last month, I had returned from my trip to New Orleans, where I had spent 2 weeks visiting art workshops, eating delicious food, and staying in a small hotel in the French Quarter. It was the first time in my life I had traveled alone, and I discovered I liked my own company. I didn't have to consult with anyone about what time to have breakfast, which museum to visit, or how long to stay watching the sunset from my hotel balcony. In New Orleans, I had met other women my age who had also decided to live for themselves after years of total devotion to their families. Mrs. Mercedes, a 75-year-old lady from Atlanta, had told me something that stayed with me. Honey, all our lives we thought being a good mother meant disappearing as women. Now we know we can't give what we don't have, and if we don't have ourselves, we have nothing to give. That birthday morning, while watering my plants, I remembered Mrs. Mercedes' words. For months, I had been practicing something I had never done before, saying no without feeling guilt. No to Darius when he wanted to visit me just when I had other plans. No to Maisie when she wanted me to accompany her to social events that didn't interest me. No to the building neighbors who wanted to involve me in their gossip about other residents. No had become a powerful word in my vocabulary, as powerful as the yes I now said to myself every day. At 9 in the morning, the phone rang. It was Darius, as I had suspected. Happy birthday, Mama. How did the most beautiful birthday girl in Charlotte wake up? Good morning, son. I woke up very well, thank you. Mama, can I come see you this afternoon? I want to take you to dinner to celebrate. Darius, I really appreciate the invitation, but I already have plans. There was a pause on the other side. In the previous months, Darius had had to learn to accept that I had my own life, with my own plans that didn't always include him. At first, it had been hard for him, but little by little, he had started to respect it. What are you going to do? I'm going to 11 o'clock service, then I'm going to have lunch alone at my favorite restaurant, and in the afternoon, I'm going to the movies. There's a French film I want to see. Don't you prefer for me to come with you? No, Darius. I prefer to be alone, but thank you for asking. Are you sure, Mama? Completely sure. After hanging up, I thought about how our relationship had changed. Darius now visited me once a week, always asking permission before coming, always respecting my schedule and activities. Our conversations were different too. We no longer talked only about his problems or needs. Now he asked me about my classes, my trips, my new friends from the painting group. 3 months ago, he had told me he had started psychological therapy. Mama, the therapist helped me understand that for years I confused love with control, and that without meaning to, I was controlling you by making you feel responsible for my happiness. That conversation had been difficult but necessary. We had finally been able to talk about things that had been buried for years. How he had used my unconditional love to justify his selfish decisions, how I had used his emotional dependence to feel needed and important. Darius, I had told him that day, true love isn't begged for or pleaded for. It's given and received freely. For years, I begged for your love and you begged for my approval. Neither of us was free. Now, we were free, each in our own space, and strangely, that had made us love each other better. That afternoon, after my solitary lunch at El Jardín restaurant, where they already knew me and always gave me the table by the window, I went to the movies as I had planned. The French film was beautiful, about an older woman who decides to open a bookstore in a small town after becoming a widow. While watching the movie, I smiled thinking about the similarities. We had both decided it wasn't too late to start over. When I left the theater, I found a message on my phone. It was from Jasmine. Mrs. Williams, I know I have no right to bother you, but I wanted to apologize. Darius told me everything that happened after our breakup, and I realized how badly I treated you. I hope someday I can speak with you personally to ask for your forgiveness. I read the message twice. I felt neither anger nor satisfaction, just a kind of peaceful indifference. Jasmine had been the instrument that destiny had used to free me, but she no longer had power over my emotions. I responded briefly. Jasmine, I appreciate the message. I wish you the best in your life. It wasn't resentful or cruel. I simply no longer cared enough to spend emotional energy on her. That night, back in my apartment, I sat in my favorite chair with a cup of chamomile tea and the book I was reading. It was a novel by Toni Morrison about strong women who rebuilt their lives after great losses. I had joined a book club at the public library where each month we discussed books written by women about topics that had previously seemed foreign to me: independence, personal rediscovery, second chances. The ladies in the book club had become my new friends. Mrs. Christina, 68, who had returned to university to study history after being widowed. Mrs. Beatrice, 75, who had opened a small homemade dessert business after her children left home. Mrs. Elena, 65, who had started taking dance classes after divorcing a husband who had belittled her for 40 years. With them, I had discovered there was a whole community of mature women who had decided their best years hadn't passed, but were just beginning. We met Friday afternoons at one of our houses, drank coffee with sweetbread, and shared our small daily victories: a book finished, a new class, a planned trip, a whole day without thinking about others' opinions. While I read that night, I reflected on the silence I had chosen to build around me. It wasn't an empty or resentful silence. It was a silence full of peace, full of myself. For decades, my house had been full of noise: the noise of worries about Darius, the noise of insecurities about my worth as a mother, the noise of unmet expectations. Now my house was silent, but it was the silence of someone who had found her center. In the mornings, I woke to birdsong instead of the phone ringing. In the afternoons, I listened to classical music instead of complaints about problems that weren't mine. At night, I fell asleep to the sound of my own peaceful breathing instead of worries about the next day.
One Sunday morning, 3 weeks after my birthday, I was at 11 o'clock service when I saw a young woman crying in the back pew. She was about 30 and carried a small baby in her arms. After the service ended, she approached me. "Ma'am, excuse me for bothering you. I'm Kiara, Mrs. Johnson's daughter-in-law, your former neighbor. She told me your story and said maybe you could give me some advice." "What do you need, honey?" "My mother-in-law lives with us, and my husband always defriends her when we have problems. I feel like I have no voice in my own house. Mrs. Johnson says you went through something similar and found a way to get ahead." I looked at her with compassion, seeing in her eyes the same desperation I had felt for so long. "Kiara, can you sit with me for a moment?" We sat on a bench in the plaza in front of the church while her baby slept in her arms. "Honey, the first thing you need to understand is that nobody can solve your problem except yourself. The second is that you have to decide what you're willing to lose to gain your dignity." "What do you mean?"
I mean that sometimes to save your soul, you have to be willing to lose everything else, including comfort, approval, and sometimes even the people you love. What makes me happiest is having you here with me in these stories. Every like or subscribe makes me feel that we're growing together. I told her my story, not with bitterness, but with serenity. I explained how I had reached the point of choosing between my dignity and the comfort of being needed. I talked about the fear I had felt making such drastic decisions, but also about the peace I had found on the other side of that fear. "Mrs. Williams, don't you regret anything?" "I regret having waited so long to value myself. I regret having wasted years trying to earn love that should have been free. But I don't regret setting boundaries, even though it was late." That afternoon, after talking with Kiara, I returned to my apartment with my heart full of gratitude. I had been able to help another woman with my experience, and that gave a new meaning to everything I had lived through. My pain hadn't been in vain if it could help another woman find her path faster.